quorum so we could start. Okay, apologize for being a little late. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda should be our Pledge of Allegiance. So I'll ask everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. The next item on the agenda is the approval of our last meeting. If there's a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
And
I
I'll
second.
second them.
There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Hearing none opposed, the item passes. The next item on the agenda is any public comments. I don't know if we have any public comments.
Hi, Chairman. Just give me a moment so I can pull it up on Zoom to see if we have anyone waiting.
Okay.
Oh, I just heard from Help Desk. They said that there's no one in Zoom for the planning and zoning meeting.
Okay. Is there anyone here that wanted to? This is different from the actual item that's going to be heard on the agenda. So this is just general public comments. Seeing none, then the next item on the agenda would be the quasi-judicial public hearing, and I'd like to ask our town attorney to please go over that so that we all know proper procedures.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, there is an item this evening that will be quasi-judicial, and as such, you should be advised that an opportunity for persons to speak on each item will be made and available after the applicant and the staff have made their presentation on each item. All testimony, including public testimony and evidence, will be made under oath or affirmation. Additionally, each person who gives testimony may be subject to cross-examination. If anybody in the audience does not wish to be either cross-examined or sworn, your testimony will be given its due weight. The general public will not be permitted to cross-examine witnesses, but the public may request the board to ask questions of staff or witnesses on their behalf. Persons representing the board, organizations must present evidence of their authority to speak on behalf of the organization. Any person presenting documents to the board should provide the town clerk with a minimum of 10 copies. Further details of the quasi-judicial procedure may be obtained from the clerk. And the matter that you have before you, Mr. Chair and board, is variance application 2021 Carlos da Cruz, hearing number 2021-0528. And at this time, I think it would be proper for the clerk to swear in anybody who will be providing testimony.
Anyone that will be talking on the item, if you could please raise your hand and be sworn on.
Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God?
Okay, you may be seated. This time, if the town want to present this item for us.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. Susana Alonso for the Planning Department. This is an application for a variance for a swimming pool in the rear yard in the RU1C district. As we have discussed in previous variance applications, the RU1C district is a very particular area of town where the lots are a little bit smaller and therefore the setbacks are a little bit tighter. The required setback for a swimming pool in this district is 5 feet minimum from all property lines. The applicant is requesting to reduce that to 2.5 feet. The applicant is proposing a very small pool in this rear yard, basically because his existing rear yard, so from the face of his house to the property line, there's only 15 feet, and this is by design in this district. This is a normal size of rear yard in the RU1C district. So as it exists, the home conforms to all existing codes. Obviously, 15 feet doesn't leave a lot of room for an actual swimming pool, and therefore the applicant is requesting a setback variance to reduce his required setback to 2.5 feet. Unfortunately, staff needs to recommend denial on this item because it does not meet the criteria for practical difficulty, and I will allow the applicant to expose to his side of the story.
Okay, if the,
I have a question through the chair for Suzanne.
yes, go ahead.
I have a question for Suzanne through the chair. Are there other homes that have the swimming pool with these setbacks that he's requesting existing there?
It appears that there is several. It seems like many of them were done prior to town incorporation with variances from the county or maybe variances that were granted in the early 2000s. I do not have any actual records of them, but they seem to exist just by looking on the aerials of the area.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at, the aerials, that's why I had the question.
And truthfully, yes, all setbacks in this area are 15 feet for the main structure, which tells you that any swimming pool that is in there is gonna be on a reduced setback basis, because if you just do the math, 15 feet minus 5 feet for the setback only leaves you 10 feet, and then plus another 5 feet from the swimming pool. So it really leaves you only to have a 5-foot swimming pool, which is really like a swimming lane more than a swimming pool.
Thank you, Ms. Alonso.
Yes.
If I may, through the chair, to Ms. Alonso, so we have not granted, as a planning and zoning board, a variance of this type?
Not in the last 7 years that I can tell. I've gone through the records to see if I found any others, but I could not find one that was granted recently, and by that I'm talking about 7 to 8 years. There may be some that were granted before that I have harder time accessing records for, but nothing that I could find recently, no.
So it would not be conceivable then that the swimming pools that are shown on this diagram would have been built at the time that the structures were constructed?
Probably, and they probably came with their own inlaid variances at the time. Remember that prior to town incorporation, this was all county, and the county has a different way of administering variances sometimes. Sometimes they're a little more lenient, or they consider things differently than we do.
But if they were built at the time the properties were constructed, if they didn't comply, the builder would have had to have variances for all of those pools?
Correct.
If they were built at the time?
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
Please, if you allow the applicant before any more questions so that he can get his own presentation before we go, so any more questions can be addressed.
Obviously, when we came in and this was present, it presented questions.
Those were addendums that were brought in today, additional information from the applicant, so he's probably going to address all those himself.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Carlos de Cruz. I live in 9049 Northwest, 145th Lane. I'm here with my family, Maria, Carlos, and Emily. We're residents of the area for the last 25 years. We moved into a house as it was being built, and I'm here to request this variance. First, I want to thank you again for your time. Susanna's done great for us, courtesy-wise, and giving us information. So with that said, we've been at our home for 25 years, and on our block, we have 6 homes that have pools. All 6 homes do not comply with the 5 feet variance. They can range from 3.5 to 4 feet. Some may be a little bit less. These homes have been verified, and I'd also like to add that across the street from me, there's 3 more homes, which my kids actually learn how to swim in. They're also not to variance, but understanding that these were built at the time that Miami-Dade County opened up our areas. So with that said, we went to our neighbors, and we got a full approval from everyone. I met with them in person. I gave them a letter. I had them sign the letter. Unanimously, they approved it. Understanding that we're kind of unique in a sense that our property, our block, it faces the old Miami Lakes. So the property in front of us would have 25 feet from the wall to our fence. And to that, we have actually a solid concrete wall structure that is 6 feet high. So it helps when we're going to be doing the digging that, you know, that concrete layer is in the ground, and it helps to fortify. Our concern from the contractor is that building the property or building the pool 4 feet, 5 feet away from the property would be ideal in order to not encroach and the stability of the property. So with that said, we also got a letter from the construction company saying, hey, you know, it's our recommendation that you follow this, that you try to keep the 5 feet distance to maintain surability to the property. So we've covered point A, point B, point C, and then we come to point D. Point D is really a given because since we're constructing a pool, we're also committing to provide pavers, sand pavers, all through. So wherever there's concrete, we're going to remove the concrete so we can absorb the water. So with that said, we have, you know, wall-to-wall concrete walls. We have our foundation, and we have a concrete wall, which the neighbor and I put up. And we have a neighbor the neighbors who are 23 feet away plus the space that we're asking. Would it said that keeping in line with the construction and the installation of the pools that we have, we're looking at 9 pools that are all not meeting the 5 feet requirement. But again, it was according to, I would hope, according to Miami-Dade County Code that gave them the permits. And that's what we're asking for today.
Are there any questions of the applicant?
I have a question. So when you look at the letter from the pool company, it says an encroachment between 1.9 and 2.6. So is it feasible that you would need less than that? So less than the 2.5?
Yeah, what we're trying to do is we're trying to meet 2.5 feet from the fence, an 8-foot pool, which originally everyone has a 10-foot, but for us to keep it narrow, we brought it down to 10 feet. So it would give us 5 feet. I mean, and I would be okay with a 4-foot buffer. I don't necessarily have to have the 5 feet. I just want to make sure that we have room to do construction, and that if we have to shore anything up, the cost would be more amicable for us.
Wait, and you said your family were the original homeowners 24 years ago, so that predates 2000.
Correct, 1996.
Okay,
correct.
so some of these original ones that may have been built like that, for whatever reason, yours did not come with a pool, correct?
Correct. At that time, we really couldn't afford it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Through the chair, I have a question. of the
I have a
applicant.
question for the applicant. From looking at the survey, I see that you have a CBS wall in the rear of your property and another one on the north end. By doing this, I hope you realize that you're creating, for lack of a better word, a pool within your backyard, because there is nowhere for water to go to. So I hope you understand that you may get flooded in the rear of your property.
Point well taken, and I appreciate that. We do have the concern with the flooding, and this is going to be a remedy for us because the corner of the property is kind of like of a bowl, so everything sits there. By constructing the pool, we're going to have a drainage where the water is going to actually go into the pool and into the pavers. I'm getting rid of about 12 feet by 40 feet of concrete. That's all going to go, and it's all going to be replaced with sand and pavers. So we're absorbing that water, and we're giving a pitch so that we can turn and have the water go out and be absorbed and go out into the street, which before we didn't have that. So it's an opportunity for us to make that right.
And if I may fill that in a little more, in terms of drainage, the swimming pool is a better condition than asphalt paving or concrete paving, in the sense that the swimming pool is collecting water from the rear yard, so therefore there's less likelihood of flooding of the surrounding areas, if that makes any sense. The condition that he has right now, you know, the walls are allowed as of right, and they're not even like, they have no consideration towards drainage. There is a requirement of every property to contain all drainage of that property within itself. And that's addressed through other means. But obviously, allowing for the swimming pool actually improves the condition of drainage of the property, because it's allowing that basically a giant receptacle of liquid that can be filled larger than if it was paved, right?
Now, does the applicant have gutters in the rear of the property, in the rear of the house?
I have gutters in the property, yes, sir.
Okay. All right, I'm looking at the neighbor's interest, and I'm also looking at your interest.
Thank you.
Because you're, like I said, you're creating kind of a pool back there. I would recommend, the gutters being diverted to the front, so that you don't get roof water into the backyard.
Perfect. Point well taken.
Through the chair.
Yeah.
So once we finish, all the board members finish asking questions of you, we have a discussion amongst ourselves, and one thing that may come up would be that instead of, you're asking for a variance right now, the code stands at 5 feet away from the property line, and you're asking for 2.5. Is there any way that you would somehow agree to something in the middle? Is that something that you would be open to? If indeed, and I don't know if that's going to come up, but it may come up,
Right.
would you be open to that?
Yes, ideally, my choice would be to have the 2 feet functionality and the form, fit, and function that we're looking for. It would be ideal, but absolutely. I mean, I'll take what I can really get at this point. I really appreciate that.
I have a question on, I just wanted to make sure I think from the addresses that you did get the consent of the two neighbors directly behind you. Am I correct?
Correct.
And they both are okay with,
And on the sides, yes, sir.
so you got all the neighbors around
Yes, sir.
your house? And the wall between your back wall is a CBS wall, as we've discussed.
Correct, yes, sir.
And the side is also a CBS wall.
Correct, yes, sir.
On both sides or just one side?
The side of the pool, which the pool will be 10 feet away from the second wall. The wall further to the west is actually an aluminum type fence, but it has a hedging on it, which makes it look nice. But, I would be considering, if need, to putting a wall in there. But I think that it would be best because the water actually percolates under the fence, it comes through, and it would go around between the walls out into the street.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Do you have a question? Go ahead. What is the percentage of green area? Because I'm looking here, and the whole front is concrete driveway, and then the whole side is stamped concrete. And now I see in the rear, there's canopy, like quarry tile and other tiles all across the back. So there's really no,
So remember that this is an RU1C property, so their requirements are the same as everybody else, but they feel different because the property is so much smaller, right? So in a larger property, the percentage feels like a lot more room, and here they naturally become very tight. In an RU1C property, generally they have a 4-foot easement that they're required to keep completely open on the side, and they have it clearly open. The front is, like we've discussed in the past with other issues, 60/40. So, if you count the space that they have open on the side, and it's roughly there. This would always be calculated at the time of permitting. In the rear yard, in most properties, because the pool is counted towards the open space, the pool would be considered part of the open space, so that your 60/40 would be coming in already compliant once you add the pool in.
right, thank you.
If I may also add, all of the concrete and the structure, the shade canopy, that's all being demoed, it's all being removed. So we're going to have pavers, sand, and the pool all the way around it. And certainly the gutters.
Would you be willing to install a French drain in that area?
In the pool area, we're asking for asking for a drain, which serves as a drain. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact term, but yeah, we do have a drain between the pool and the property going around it. That's part of the design also. I'm not sure what the drain is called, but it is a drain, and I want that.
Deco drain.
Deco drain, thank you.
Yeah, but deco drain in there.
If I may, I just want, because again, once you sit down, we kind of can't bring you back up and ask you questions. I just want to make it clear so that when we discuss amongst ourselves, the change that you are doing, it's actually improving your current flooding condition is your house as it stands now.
Certainly,
So you have this pooling situation already now.
I do.
Okay, so this is actually removing the concrete and adding more water base and actually adding this drainage system that you don't presently have, right?
Correct.
And the reason for the 2.5, based on what I'm reading, you need that 5-foot setback to maintain the structure and integrity of the home to not have issues thereafter.
Correct.
So that's why we, just because I don't know where our conversation may lead,
Certainly.
but you're requesting 2.5 feet as opposed to the 5 because you need that space to maintain the home structure, right?
Correct.
And Susanna, I think back some time ago, I think it was maybe about a year ago, we had in a similar property where they needed like a 10-foot setback, but we gave them a 2-foot setback with a tiki hut, and they were trying to make that, it wasn't a pool, but I believe it was in the same area, and that was something that was granted. We did grant it, and they needed a 10 and requested a 2. They needed a variance of an existing tiki hut with a rear setback of 2 feet where 10 feet were required. And the property, if I'm not mistaken, was on a 163 and Northwest 88th.
You're straining my memory now.
It was about a year ago.
But 163rd would be north of there, and that would be in the Royal Lakes subdivision. So I think the dimensions of the lot are a little bit larger there.
I may remember which one you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think he
it was
wanted to do like a rear addition, and he couldn't go into the kitchen, and he wanted to do the rear addition. There was a tiki hut, remember? So it wasn't a
Yes.
pool, but it was,
There was a structure.
right.
Oh, okay, yes, I remember which one. Yeah, but that one ended up being 21 feet from the property line at the end of the day. So
Right, there were 2, and one was 21 where 20 feet were required, and one was a setback of 2 where 10 were required.
Yeah.
So it wasn't exactly for the same reasons, but a request for a setback.
Yeah. I don't remember I think again, I'm speaking from memory, but I think the side variance was never granted. I think you only granted the rear setback variance, and the side one was removed from the request in order to grant the rear one. But I don't remember exactly. You're straining my
So-
memory.
I could go back to the emails.
So basically, the way I'm doing the numbers is you have in this, and I take it where you're gonna start the pool is probably where your kitchen, family room, or something like that, that's where that opens up.
Yeah, to clarify, the pool is going to be starting from the further away from the Florida room. I want to be able to open the Florida room. My mother-in-law has a problem seeing. I don't want her to walk in and have 3 steps into the pool. So I want to have that area where we can have some lounge furnishing.
Right.
And then you have the view of the pool.
Right, because I assume that in those houses, that kitchen, family room area also abuts the 10-foot side yard.
In my case, no, it's got the zero lot, so the neighbor's fence goes along the side of the house, which
Okay,
would
so
be the
you're gonna
Florida
do it that
room.
way, okay.
So as we open the Florida room, we want to have an area for seating, and then we want to have the pool away. Some people want to see it, but we feel that it's a lot easier for us to go in, and for my in-law, she goes out, she can have her seat and not have to worry about walking.
Because what I noticed is obviously on your lot, it's kind of at an angle. So that area there is the shortest part, which is 15 and a half feet.
Correct.
And I guess that's why the 2.5 variance is being requested, because that gives you 5 feet from the house, 8 feet for the pool, and 2.5 feet.
Correct. We went from a 10 feet to a 8,
Yeah.
and it would be just way too small to make it a 7, especially if we're going to have a bench inside it.
Right.
So it's more like a big in-ground jacuzzi pool where we can all stay. I mean, you know, with the conditions today and the in-laws coming in family, we kind of want to be more at the house,
Okay,
and it's much more accommodating.
thank you. Are
Thank
there any
you.
other questions of applicant or staff?
Yes. The pool deck, I don't know if I was looking for it, but I can't find it. Are you gonna do that brick on sand?
I'm sorry?
The pool deck, what is it going to be made out of?
Everything that we're going to be doing, except for the base around the pool, we want to do paver on sand.
On sand.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Unless unless the building requirements for the structure of the pool requires some kind of additional concrete around it to reinforce, obviously that's where we would. But aesthetically, for walking space, we want that to be tile, complete.
Brick on sand.
Yes, sir. Brick on sand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, you may be seated, and if there's no other comments from the audience, then I'll close the public hearing.
Thank you,
At this
sir.
time, I'll ask you to please have a seat, and we'll discuss it amongst ourselves.
Thank you.
Through the chair?
Yes.
Well, I don't know if you wanted to start.
No,
You wanna
basically, I
open?
was gonna, if we wanted to discuss, or if we wanted to entertain a motion, one way or the other, and then discuss.
I would put a motion to approve
Okay, a motion to approve
the variance of 2.5.
Okay, is there a second to that
I'll
motion?
second.
Okay, so we have a motion, and it has been seconded. At this time, I'll open it up for discussion.
I have I would like to make an amendment
A friendly
to the
amendment?
motion. I think the water should be diverted somewhere else, and I say to the front because I assume that we have public drainage in the front. So the applicant said that he has gutters. So I would like to recommend that he diverts all the water from the roof that's going to the back to the front. Because he is creating a pool back there.
The only thing,
Mr.
I think you can.
Board Member Laurencio, he's already required to contain all his water inside his property. That is already a requirement of the code. There is no need to add additional, and furthermore, we would not want him to divert it to the front, because then it would end up on our road, and then it would end up in their storm system. So he needs to contain his storm water in his property. And to that end is where the pavers on sand come in, and/or a French drain, or the drain that, I forgot the name that Mr. De La Sierra mentioned.
Deco drain.
French drain.
Yes.
French
Okay.
drain.
I think you said
And
it was
he
a
is
deco drain.
containing,
Right.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So diverting the roof water, which is what the gutters do, the gutters are using the water that comes on the roof, and sort of that, I would actually ask that they divert it to the back, so that he gets to drip it on his own pavers and not on our road,
Yeah, he should
which is what's on
maintain
his
And I
front.
believe that that's what he had mentioned,
should
that
maintain
that
it
the
on the
gutters
back.
are in the back.
I
Right.
know, but from the survey, his front is all covered with concrete. The sides are covered with concrete.
Right, and again, this is the existing condition. When you were presenting the survey, we're presenting the existing condition. If he does nothing, that's what remains. There's still concrete in the rear part, and there's concrete in the front. Technically, he's not asking for any accommodation on the front. If you would like to discuss the materials that he has in his front driveway as a condition of approval, then that's something that is up to the board. Right now, he is proposing to have, and I would suggest that you make that a condition of approval, that all paving in the rear yard be exclusively pavers on sand, which would be very porous. with obviously the exception of the actual swimming pool. And that would contain pretty much all of his rainwater, to the degree that is reasonable. If you find that it's necessary still to add some sort of additional drainage, that would be also okay. But the front of the property is a different issue. You can discuss it and add conditions as to remedy the front of the property as well, if you feel that it should be brought into compliance, but it would be a separate issue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you said that there was a 4-foot area, buffer area that runs along the whole property line at the 0 lot line with the adjacent neighbor.
Yes.
That is now green area for
Yes,
percolation
correct.
purposes, correct?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
And you can see it on his survey and on the drawing, that it's.
Yeah, I see it
You
on
see
the
the little
drawing.
dashed line that indicates the 4-foot
Right.
drainage easement that is required to be maintained between the two properties.
Yeah, I'm looking at that on
Okay, so you're
page
saying
1
that,
of 3.
so you're saying that by code, he's retaining all the water, all the runoff water in the rear?
He's required to, yes,
And he's complying with the code?
correct. That's the,
Okay, okay. No, no.
he's required to do so, right? So what we cannot do is divert all the water that should be in the rear area to the front, because now for sure it's gonna end up on the road.
I thought he was not in compliance with the green area or
He's
in the rear.
borderline in compliance. And again, the issue is that I think we've revisited in the past, and I think this issue came up in the last few, the project of the kids from Miami Lakes Middle was precisely speaking to this, is that, the paving material that he has in his driveway right now, the concrete that he has in his driveway is very non-porous and is a very non-forgiving space because it really absorbs nothing. Were that to be exchanged for pavers on sand, the permeability of his front driveway would increase significantly. But as it stands right now, it is what we need to live with because it is what is there permitted and in compliance. So there's nothing out of the code in what he has because concrete surfaces are allowed as a paving surface. And the percentages are roughly correct. Are they exactly correct? I haven't calculated it, but just from the looks of it, it looks correct. Just so that's why usually if it looks correct, I don't ask them to go to the effort of actually calculating it. Usually when it's not correct, you can kind of tell by just looking at it. Does that make sense? Because you see a few and you get it. This does not look out of compliance from like a simple eye test. So maybe it's not 60-40, maybe it's 62-38, but it's roughly right there. Yeah.
Susanna, presently, he's
No,
not,
if,
go ahead.
I mean, if by code he is retaining his water in the backyard, then by all means, I withdraw my recommendation.
Okay.
I
He
thought
has
he was
to.
short.
The point that you're making that is very valid is that yes, anything that he paves, if this variance is granted, anything that he paves in the backyard needs to be pavers on sand necessarily, so that because you're reducing that setback to the neighbor so much that you're really leaving very little place for water to naturally absorb even the pool water between one property and the next. So you really need to decrease that intrusion of any stuff that may bunch up from the water, to those 2 feet and allow enough, right? So allow enough absorption around that those 2 feet become okay, right? That they become sufficient for the amount of absorption that he needs.
Yeah. So then, right now, even though he has said it, there's nothing that requires him to make that porous and sand? Because if not, I would amend it, because I think logic would dictate that if everything's gonna be outside, let's make it sand and porous, because the front is actually concrete, it wouldn't seep through. So I would amend the motion to say, approve it with a 2.5-foot setback, but with the requirement that would have to be pavers on sand.
And yes, that can be a condition of approval, correct?
Okay, if there's a second.
You're going to second them?
We'll second again, yes. The amended
Yeah.
motion.
So it's basically the motion is to approve with the condition that you have to put the pavers on sand, which is what you stated you were going to do. Further discussion on the item, or?
Well, I don't know how, I just wanted to mention something, because, you know, the folks that live in that area, of course, have smaller, I mean, they're single-family homes, and they have smaller lot sizes, right? And what I was grappling with, and I spoke with Susanna this afternoon, and I think it's a very valid point, that do those owners have a right to have a pool, like everyone else, like, you know, all the other residents in the town? And that's something that I struggled with, and I do believe, you know, there are some really nice-looking pools that are a little bit smaller than traditional 15 by 30, and I've seen beautiful ones, but I think if we don't grant them the variance, it would be significantly smaller than a traditional pool, and it may not even be worth building to somebody. So that's what I struggled with, and I do think that I would say that, yeah, that they have a right to build a pool.
And just to piggyback on that, you know, obviously I put the motion, so I'm inclined to rule for it. I mean, the fact that there's other similar situated homes with those pools that are allowed to have it, and because they were the first-time homeowners, and if they would have at that time, I'm assuming, because you said if they were kind of already the built-in variance when they purchased it, they would have been able to have it. And just because of maybe economic status or whatnot, they weren't able to put it in at that time. Why deprive them of that now if he's going to actually, in my opinion, he's actually removing the concrete and making his current condition better? So that's just my point of view on that.
I agree, and my position is, again, if we go through the different criteria that we are supposed to use, I do believe that they do fall into several of the items. You have support of your neighbors, especially the ones that are directly impacted. There are other homes in the area that have a similar situation. So I do believe that the factors, there's several factors that qualify for the variance, so I'll be supporting the variance as well.
I brought up the map with the diagram of the pools to illustrate again how many properties have pools. I will be supporting this as well.
I will be supporting it as well because of the conditions, what exists there. And they're only coming 2'6" at one corner. At the other end of the pool, they're actually 3'6" away from the wall because of the situation with the lot, so.
So if you want to call the roll.
Board Member De La Sera,
Yes.
Board Member Fernandez,
Yes.
Board Member Leoncio,
Yes.
Board Member Senra is absent. Board Member Yanes,
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Matos,
Yes.
Chairman Julia.
Yes, so the motion
Motion
carries.
passes.
So congratulations, enjoy your pool. Are there any other items?
Director's report.
Right.
Really quick, the short-term rentals item that you heard a couple of meetings ago is going to get workshopped by the council. Your input was instrumental in that because they actually found it that they needed to look at it a little closer to address some of the issues that you guys brought up during your discussion. And I just wanted to congratulate you on bringing up a really good conversation piece to the council. You will be hearing it again because it most likely will come back in a slightly different form because after the workshop, we will reorganize the ordinance to make more sense with whatever it is that they come back with.
Okay, so
Can I just say one thing, personal privilege, because I was on Zoom last meeting, obviously, and so many residents told me thereafter, if we can try to, sometimes they just don't hear anything. When we mute, we hear nothing. And because I was on and was able to kind of directly connect, they were able to then get back on and hear, and so many of them thereafter reached out and, thanked me. So I promised I would make it a point to bring it up to IT to hear and maybe see if somehow we can just ensure via Zoom that they're able, obviously, internet, IT, things happen. Man, it's out of everyone's control, but I just wanted to point that out because I got to experience that last time. So,
And I'm sorry, but I forgot one little issue. I have point of personal privilege. I have a new intern that I want to introduce. His name is John Breyer. He's getting his master's in urban planning, and he's going to be helping me with a lot of the issues that, I'm going to be bringing in the next few months. He's going to be helping with all that, including probably the comp plan amendment that we need to bring in the near future. That should be quite a lot of work, and he's going to be on board helping out with that. And
Welcome.
we're very happy to have him on board.
You're welcome
Welcome.
here.
All right, so I guess at this time I'd adjourn the meeting. We're good? Timing.